Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Most Excellent Entertainment Podcast. And my guest this week is a man who had a really unique hit song in the 90s and has just continued making really cool music since. One of my favorite albums of all time is the second album by his band White Trash, Mr. Dave D-Bone Alvin. And you're welcome.
Thanks for having me, and thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad to have you, man. This is going to be fun. Last couple weeks, I've had on a few people who I have a lot of admiration for, and I always get really hyped up before these ones. So it's a good time.
All right, cool.
Yeah. So before we get into the interview, if I have a little bit of a history personally with the band or the guest, I like to talk about it. So, White Trash was so different from anything else that was on TV, on MTV. Apple Pie. It was just such a cool song. Like, you didn't hear rock bands, especially not. I mean, Fishbone, but there was very few rock bands that had live horns. And I remember talking to my little brother, and we were both really into hard rock. And I said, "Hey, buddy, what are you into right now?" And he said he was starting to listen to rap music, but there was this band called White Trash that had this really funky song that he liked. So, yeah, the crossover appeal was definitely there with the funk and the rock. And then when the second album came out, the local metal show played Pig. And I was like, dude, White Trash has a new album. I went right down and got it. And seriously, like during the 90s, it was that album, Been There by Best Kissers in the World, and Dramarama's Hi-Fi Sci-Fi. I listened to those three albums every single day, dude. They were my favorite albums. Like, yeah, so I want to thank you for making such cool music, man. It's awesome.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for the kind words.
Absolutely. So how did White Trash come together, and was did you feel like getting put in as a hard rock band was fair to you guys, or did you feel like there was a different category maybe that would have helped you a little more? Or?
Yeah, that's a good question. It kind of works both ways. When we started out, we were total hard rock, influenced by Aerosmith, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, all that. And we were sort of like a party band, and we played all the rock clubs in New York, Limelight, Cat Club, all that stuff, Lemoore, Brooklyn, all that stuff. And so that's where we started, but we were like, always trying to do an interesting show. So we always had like some kind of gimmick, or like, I used to give money to the crowd if they were cheering. We'd order pizzas, we give out White Castle hamburgers, smash TVs, like one of my idols, Wendy O. Williams, a lot of plasmatics influence in the performance, not in the music so much, with smashing things, cakes, and getting every venue hated us because they had to clean up after us. But and then so then at some point we kind of moved towards bringing in like backup singers and kind of having the girls. They were called the Love Dogs. And we had backup vocals. They really just got drunk, and one of the shows they just passed out. It was like kind of a mess. But then at some point, the influence of Aerosmith, and plus I listened to a lot of blues and funk stuff. We started talking about getting horn players, and the bass player Aaron was in high school band class with a couple of guys who played horns in the band class. And so he was like, "Oh, I'll ask if some of these guys want to come," And we wound up with Chris Orbisi, Brendan Stiles, Terry Thomas, who became the Badass Brass, even though that term is incorrect. It's not all brass, but anyway. So going back to your question, we started out in the clubs. That's where everything came from. All the attention we got was in the rock clubs. We got local radio playing us, all that stuff. But as we started bringing in horns and bringing in other influences into it, like I said, I like a lot of blues and funk stuff. Ethan was really into like progressive music, stuff, but also just straight up heavy metal. and Aaron and Mike as a rhythm section, we're getting into like the Chili Peppers and stuff. So
Sure.
it kind of like evolved into something else that was still is kind of unique, I think.
Yeah.
And so initially at the time, the scenes weren't so like segregated. So it didn't really matter, if you were like alternative. Well, it wasn't really alternative
Yeah.
then. It was more like new
Yeah.
wave.
Modern rock or whatever they would call it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was like, we listened to everything and we hung out with people that listened to everything. I don't think that it was as strange as time moved on. Everybody like picks a
Yeah.
genre, but at the time it was kind of a very open music industry. So, I like The Cure and I like Tom Waits and, the Plasmatics, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for
How they
sure.
all fit together, I can't explain it to you, but, for me, that all works. So we started to become something else. And that's when the record labels and everybody started getting interested because we stood out, so the horns and the performance aspect of it, we were in these heavy metal clubs, we looked the part, we looked like rocker dudes, but we were doing different music. So the scene was vital to us, making it because that was our avenue to
Yeah.
get somewhere. But as just not to spoil the ending, but like onward, it was difficult because you had this 80s, early 90s metal scene that then was out,
Yeah.
and somehow we
Yeah.
were attached to that, even though honestly we reaped the benefits of it, but musically we weren't really like, the same thing as bands like, Skid Row or Kicks or, which is
Yeah.
not any of those bands down. It's just that we were doing something different. But for some reason, we went that way and people left us there. We were doing stuff in Metal Edge magazine and,
Right.
it was great,
Right.
great fans and great people that we met. But going forward, I think maybe we were a little miscategorized as like a hair
Yeah.
metal band because that really wasn't what we were doing.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I thought was cool, you wore a suit. Like
Yeah.
when, yeah, how did like Dave Byrne wore a suit, and
Yeah. Well, I
Brian
like him
Eno,
too.
but where did the idea come for you to throw on
Well,
a suit?
well, cause like the blues guys, like James Brown, Prince sometimes would throw on a suit. We were also big fans of the Blues Brothers. I mean, they had the white shirt, but I just went for the black on black
Yeah.
thing. You know what I mean? So it was supposed to be a nod towards more of like that. Like how those old blues guys would, kind of dress professional for the show. BB King, Albert King.
Nice. That's
So it was
awesome.
kind of influenced by that. And it was, and plus, like I said, we were always looking to do something a little different.
Yeah.
So I started up, trust me, leather, spikes, bootstraps, just like everybody else. But then, you tried to do your own thing, which again is something that is kind of lost nowadays. Everybody's looking to fit into some
Yeah.
genre. We were trying to create our own genre, not just us. I think lots of people back then were trying to like drill their own hole and forge their own path or whatever you want to say. And so like I said, was nothing against the heavy metal scene at all, but like as it went on, we were trying to do things that were different and would separate us. So that worked very well in the beginning, but later on, it's harder to figure out where you fit in.
Yeah, yeah. I was I mean, obviously I'm very familiar with the first two albums, but I was kind of going back and doing a little research. And it's funny watching the Apple Pie video, like it looks like a bunch of skater kids and a guy in a suit. Like that's
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
um
Well, I always wanted to like slightly separate myself from those goofballs because
yeah,
I'm the one who got all the girls. You know what
of
I'm saying?
course. Yeah, absolutely.
You got,
100%.
hey, I'm not. I mean, I'm goofing around, but I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, they really were like skater kids, more of like a, like pulled from the streets of Queens, New York,
Yeah.
and I was sort of the, um, you know, MC.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. It was a cool image, man, for sure. And it was different. I can, like Scatterbrain, Ugly Kid Joe,
yeah,
maybe, but not a lot of other bands were really uh dressing in regular clothes and just going out and playing good music. It was cool, man. I dug it a lot, like going back and looking at it. So um
yeah.
yeah. And another thing that I found, was it the John Stewart show where you guys went on to promote the second album?
Yeah,
And you played Judge Me Do.
yeah,
So that's an odd choice. Was that your guys' decision, or how because that's from the first album.
yeah. I don't remember exactly why we decided to do that. It might have been just to show, like, yeah, we're the same band.
Right.
And
Okay.
also, I don't think we had the horns with us, so it
Maybe
was
not.
like,
Yeah.
whereas like the big songs from the first album were Apple Pie and The Crawl.
Yeah.
Poor White Trash had too much like bad language in it, and I think we just said, well, let's just do that. That's like, because that's like a surefire thing. We could open with
Oh, yeah.
that 90% of the time. You just come out, the beat just kicks everything off. Like, let's everyone know this is what's going on for the next
Yeah.
hour. You know what I mean?
Right on.
So I don't remember. I think it was just I don't know if it could have also been like a last minute decision. I don't really remember, but um I think it sort of had to do with like saying it, even though there's a totally different lineup,
Right.
on the second record, that it's the same, maybe.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
think it was a nod to that.
Okay. Right on. I think the drumming on both albums is really, really cool. I don't know how to I always describe it as circular drumming, but I don't know if that's an actual term. But it's when the drums sound like they're going like in a circle, and it's like the coolest thing. So I really gravitated towards the drums, and especially in that song, "Judge Me Do," like the drums are just insane. So I mean, I can see why you would want to play it, get people pumped up. So
Yeah, I mean, Mike Calderella, the original drummer, was the one who threw down the beat on the album, and
yeah,
and that's the beat. Like, that's
yeah,
the beat.
for
That's
sure.
basically everything we do. Like you
Yeah,
said, sort of a funk beat, a James Brown kind of beat, and Dave Barkow was the second drummer. Well, first of all, I'll say Mike Calderella started off being like a Dave Lombardo kind of drummer,
okay, sure,
Slayer, double
yeah,
bass, insane. And then he changed and became this, And
right,
also, Barkow was a straight up heavy metal drummer, double bass,
yeah,
And when we brought him in, I was like, all up his ass because I had very specific ideas about how
right,
the parts should be played and stuff. And there was like a learning curve, and then it just clicked for him. And then
yeah,
it was like, there it is. Now I don't ever have to tell this guy what to do. Like, he knows,
right
like,
on,
so there's a
yeah.
certain feel to the band, and once you get
Yeah.
the feel, but both of those guys are exceptional drummers.
Yeah, so you touched on it a little bit, but with the second album, it was a completely different band except for you, and I think half of the brass section stayed, right? Is that
Well, I mean, it less than half. One
okay?
is
One of the
uh
guys. So
yeah.
how did that? What happened there?
So going back even before we got signed, we really didn't get along that well. I mean, and when I
Okay.
say that, I mean nobody liked me. So
Well,
but whatever, lead singer disease, whatever,
yeah,
and
yeah,
whatever. I'm
yeah.
unapologetic. I don't care.
You
But
got it, you're right.
but no, there were times when I certainly could have behaved better. That's for sure. But um so again, it's sort of like the benefit, the good things become the bad things. So everybody had these different interests. And Ethan kind of kicked it off in that he really didn't like playing with the horns because he kind of
Mhm.
felt like they were in his frequency range. And what he wanted to do at that time was sort of a project more like Badlands with Jakey Lee, that
Sure.
it's like a traditional kind of hard rock,
Like
heavy
a
metal.
'70s hard rock sound with like bluesy.
Yeah,
Got
so he just, you know, kind of lost interest in it. And
it. Okay.
his brother is Aaron. Aaron's the bass player. So,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they lived across the street from me. Like, we all lived in the same neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Um, most of us, and everybody in Queens, but
Right.
Queens is a big place. But they literally lived across the street from me. So I was in bands with them since I was 13.
Okay.
And so when we shifted more into the funk and the blues and stuff, that was never Ethan's thing, even though he can play it very well. He just wasn't
Right.
into that. And like I said, Mike and Aaron were kind of drifting off more in a Chili Peppers kind of direction. And, you know, as that alternative rock scene came in, they kind of paired up with this other dude on another project. So, you know, one day, when we were on the road, I mean, you could tell. It's like I've heard people say, like when Guns N' Roses did the Use Your Illusion albums.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember at the time being in the music industry, people talking about, well, they're doing a double record because they're never going to get these guys in the studio.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
everybody saw the writing on the wall, like this is, you know, over. I mean, not over because they weren't good. It was over because, well, the
Just
personality,
personalities.
business
Yeah.
conflicts or whatever goes on. People fucking each other's girlfriends, you know, whatever happens.
Right. Sure.
Everybody's band, right? So,
Yeah.
so it was kind of the same thing. Like we were touring and we had these videos on MTV and, strippers throwing themselves at us. And, this
Right.
is, this is the heyday of rock and roll. This was like
Yeah.
the most ridiculous point in rock history, right? Where like
Right.
everything is in excess, right?
And
So
Apple Pie was a top 40 hit. Like
yeah,
it,
we were on
it was
Billboard.
pretty high on Billboard. So yeah, I mean, you guys for a minute were.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we were like broke out and like we were on MTV all the time, which, ruled the world before people found out about 15-year-old pregnant girls or whatever they put on there now.
Yeah.
But so we were just going insane and having a great time. And but like I said, the ridiculousness of some of that era led to grunge and a change, in the music industry. So I know like Aaron and Mike kind of were drifting towards this other project that was closer to a Nirvana kind of thing. And Ethan wanted to do the other thing. So, we met in front of my house. We were in the car and we're sitting there and everybody's telling me how they don't want to do it anymore. And I was saying, I get it, but we have a guaranteed second record. Like, why don't we just make a second record and everybody goes about their way? But their heart wasn't in it, so that's a legitimate reason. So, in the conversation, they said, "Well, if you want to do it, though, you thought of the name, and you're the front man. Like, if you want to keep doing it, go ahead." And I think they kind of said that honestly in a way, like, "Fuck him, what's he gonna do?" So that's how I took it. So, so I was like, well, then I am going to do that. So, we worked out all the business part, with lawyers and managers and all that stuff. And then, so the question is, who's going to play in the band, right? Like, and so the second lineup is really, well, like, so Craig, who was the second guitar player, he was roommates with Ethan. He was Ethan's guitar tech for a while. And me and him hit it off because we're both big movie buffs. And so I was hanging out with him and I was like, yo, would you want to like slide into that? Or would you feel weird about replacing your buddy? And he was like, no, I want to do it. He's like, but I'll check with Ethan. And Ethan didn't care. And then Eric, who was the bass player, was actually playing with Ethan at this time. But he was a really good bass player. And we were like, yoink, we'll take him. Nice. So then he was in, and then like I said, we found Dave, who was like a veteran. He was a young gun there, but he was on the same scene as us, and he played in this band called the Taku. There's like a Latin kind of metal band from Queens. Nice. Willie Mascara band, one of my all-time friends. Love that guy. And so we said yoink, and we took Dave from there, right? So there's your four. That's who was on the Jon Stewart show. And then I approached the horn section and said, I don't. So they thought they were going to go play with Aaron and Mike in this Nirvana kind of band.
Okay.
Which I wasn't clear how that was going to work, but I said, like if you guys do that, that's cool, but you're welcome to come and do this project as well. And they said no. So then one guy, Brendan, who was the trumpet player, apparently was like, wait a minute, Dave's the only one that actually has a record deal right now.
Yeah, right. You'd think, that might,
So he took the professional option and said, well, this is
Yeah.
this is Elektra Records. Dave's got this thing up and running. So he came over and brought in. We kind of circulated through a bunch. We never really found a horn player that worked so great with that project. But so then we called them the half-ass brass because instead of the badass brass, I was like, all right, this is the half-ass brass. But the second album was a little less horn centric and kind of a slight change in that we went a little more like guitar rock.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's bigger riffs and stuff on the second album for sure.
Yeah, so we kind of felt like we could do everything that was on the first record, but we wanted to do something different. So it wasn't just like replacement guys. It was like it was its own project. You know what I mean? So in some ways it could have been called something else, but it was still pretty close to the original project. And when we were dealing with the label, that was a conversation like, should this be another project? And then we demoed some songs for them and brought them in, and they're like, nope, that sounds like White Trash. Like, let's just keep that going,
Right on. Yeah. Like I said, I heard it on the metal album or the metal show, and I don't know if they would have played anything off the first album this was like a heavy metal show. And they were like, here's, the new song from White Trash, and they played Pig, and it was like, holy shit. It was, and like your voice was still there. And it's funny because I didn't remember that you guys kept so many funk elements. Like I thought that the album was at the time almost like a power pop / heavy metal album. But when I went back and listened to it this week, getting ready, there is still a lot of the funk is still there. I had just forgotten it, I guess. I don't know.
So, a band I always, still one of my favorite bands is King Crimson.
And sure.
And Robert Fripp, that's really his project. The lineup has changed a million times and it's evolved. It's still always King Crimson. It's still always Robert Fripp, but it evolved, especially in the 80s. It was a much different thing. So this to me was sort of like how when Crimson in the 80s brought in like Baloo and, and did that the COCK album was sort of like that, like bringing in like a different flavor into it, So had it not, so had it continued on uninterrupted, the idea would have been to kind of reinvent the wheel every album.
Every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Adrian Belew is one of the best avant-garde guitarists of all time. Oh my Lord.
I've seen him a million times. I love Adrian Belew.
Really? Oh, that's awesome, man. Very cool.
Yeah.
So after the second album, which like I said, I think the songwriting really stepped up on the second album. I think your vocal performance on Come Tuesday is the out of the two albums, at least, it's the best. That's your best vocal, in my opinion. Like it sounds so strong and so good. And it's emotional, and it's funny to think about how you're singing about a chick on TV, but it's a super, it sounds so desperate. I love it, man.
Specifically Tuesday Well, hence Come Tuesday. Yeah.
Awesome.
So that was also a deliberate thing. So the first album was produced by George Drakoulias, who had just done the first Black Crowes album.
Oh, right? Nice.
And we wanted a kind of raw, kind of vibe. We got him, and it was really like, you had to be there. It was an all-star team because the engineer was Brendan O'Brien, who wound up producing Pearl Jam, and I think universally known as one of the best producers out there. And the other guy who didn't work on the album, but just name dropping, the other guy in the studio all the time for the first few weeks was Rick Rubin, because George Drakoulias was his roommate at NYU. And, so they worked together a lot. And Brendan O'Brien went off with Rick at the end of our album to do Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic with the Chili Peppers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like those are like, that was a master class that informed every other recording session I've ever done in my life. But that was very much to a click. All the vocals were done 100 times and double, triple, like, the way they made professional records. It was, and But to us, at the end of that, there was always a feeling for the first band, I mean, that
Yeah.
it might have been better to go a little bit more live because we were such a good live band that we
Right.
always felt like something was missing from, the performance end, And so when I did the second record, I was like, we're not using click tracks. You know what I'm saying? We were like, there's a lot of parts where there aren't a lot of guitar tracks, and it's, you know what I mean? We kind of
Yeah.
went
It
much more garage
sounds. Yeah.
rock, and again
Yeah.
with the vocals, I kind of just let it out. The other thing was on the first album, um, I have a very high voice,
Sure.
but you listen to the second, I go down a lot. Like I have
Mhm.
more of a
Yeah.
range. On the
Yep.
first record, the way they approached that was sort of just have me to sing everything high, double it,
Mhm.
and then sing it all low, like an octave lower. So they had
Gotcha.
three tracks at any time to play around with.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I like to kind of actually
Like,
navigate that.
yeah.
So I wasn't really allowed to do that on the first record. So when I got the second record, I was like, no, like, you know what I mean? I'm gonna do my best Janis Joplin, like, because I'm a huge fan of her singing, and
Sure.
that's someone whose kind of performance, that was the kind of vocal performance I wanted to emulate. So, they let me do it. There were times they had to fix things because, I was just screaming at the top of my lungs and, you
Right.
know, drunk or whatever. So,
Yeah.
we had, and on that record, so we had Bryce Goggin, who wound up doing Space Hog, Daniel Ray, who was our producer, who worked with the Ramones and White Zombie, and one of the engineers we had was Mark Durnley, who worked with AC/DC. So again, just that's the
Yeah.
good thing about the old days of the music industry, is they bring in A-list talent, and you're in, like, really good studios, whether it's Electric Ladyland, Hollywood Sound, Rumbo. We were in a lot of major studios with major players, and that certainly helps you
Yeah.
sound better than you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. You can hear when you mention White Zombie, you can hear some of that in the guitars. Like I said, it's a much more riff heavy album than the first one for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. I'm a big
but
riff guy. That's
yeah.
even with these guys. Now that everybody's friends again and everything, that's like my, like. Well, Dave comes up with the good riffs. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Awesome. Awesome. So after the second album, like I personally didn't hear about you guys again. And then once the internet became a thing, I would kind of search for like bands who I loved and see what they were up to. And you guys released quite a few albums, and they're all out of print, which
Yeah.
I guess that is a testament to your fans, because you can't find them anywhere. Like it's wild, man. So if you want to, like, were those independently released, or how did
Yeah.
those records come about, and why are they all gone? Like, yeah.
So, so after the second record, as a result of, all the thing, it did,
Yeah.
it was hard to continue. I mean, we could have, there's lots of bands continued, but
Yeah.
personally, it kind of took a toll on me, partying and all of that. And I wanted to get away from it. And again, bringing up Jon Stewart, he had used our song "The Crawl" for his talk show on MTV.
Right.
Then they wound up giving him a syndicated show on Paramount. This is
Yeah.
before the Daily Show. He had the Jon Stewart show, and
Yeah.
so
I love that show.
they were trying to get the Crawl, but EMI, who was our publisher, wouldn't. They wanted to buy the song, which is generally not how you do it.
Right. You
So they
license it. Yeah.
right, but they wanted to buy it. I don't remember what the whole thing was, but they wanted to buy it, and EMI said no. And I just happened, Craig happened to know, might have been even Bryce Goggin's girlfriend, if I remember correctly, worked
Okay.
for the Jon Stewart show. It was just a
Okay.
coincidence. And I was talking to her and she mentioned that. So I said, well, why not just deal with me? I'll just write the same song and we'll call it something else. And you can
Right.
pay me directly and I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Which is basically what happened. It was more complicated because you can't really just write the same exact
Yeah. I
song.
get to
You had
change
to bring in like a musicologist to pour over it and go, no, yeah, that should start on the upbeat, not the downbeat, like whatever. But
Right.
so like I wrote, another song for Jon Stewart, and like at the time it was a lot of money, and then it went into syndication, which paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
And um, the band wasn't really sure. And I kind of had this idea at 25 years old that I was going to retire at 25. And I did.
Hey,
I
yeah.
went to Florida and retired. I mean, it's ridiculous in hindsight, but that's,
Right.
you know, that's the headspace I was in. Like, I'm done. So I
Yeah.
took my money and I went to Florida, um, and that didn't work out great. And so there was just a bunch of years there where I was doing nothing with music. I went back to college. I got a master's degree, and I was doing
Yeah.
film and all this stuff. And I lived in California. And when I came back from California, I wound up bumping into Aaron, and you know, the past was the past, and we all kind of moved past all the stupid arguments and stuff. And then I think, this guy we knew, Dave Unger, DJ Bagel. A lot of people know this guy in the heavy metal community. He was working
Yeah.
at a club called the Crazy Donkey on Long Island, which was, one of these places where like LA Guns and, Faster Pussy got all these bands that are still doing it. They would
Yeah.
play this place. It was a good club in Farmingdale, New York. And he went to them and said, "Oh, I could probably get White Trash back together to do a show." So we did this reunion show, and it was really cool. We had a great time. And then for me, I was like, well, wait a minute, because you saw there was all these people and people reaching out, and this was MySpace. This is before even Facebook, I think, right? So
Right.
it's like, so all these people are coming out of the woodwork asking, "Oh, I loved your album, blah blah blah." And I was like, man, we should really record something, kind of capitalize on the momentum of this. So at first, everybody told me no. And again, in my head, I'm like, well, then I'm going to do it myself. So I was working on some stuff, and then Aaron reached out and he was like, you know what, you're right. Like, even if those guys don't want to do it, I'll do it. So we got together and we put together what wound up being called 3D Monkeys in Space.
Right.
And we did get his brother back in. We did get Mike back in. So we had the original band. We had the original horn section, except for Brendan. And
Yeah.
we put that out ourselves. And we did, not extensive touring, but we played a bunch. And it kind of just snowballed from there, where we realized there was some demand, and it was kind of like, wasn't really full time, but we'd get together and make this stuff happen. So then we're playing, we're doing all this stuff, everything's going on, Facebook blows up, all this stuff. And then we said, let's do another record. So that one was Suburban Purgatory, and that one had Craig on it in place of Ethan, because Ethan wasn't that interested in doing it again. And
Okay.
we did that. Then Craig was kind of retiring and moving out, and Ethan came back in, and we were booking some stuff, and then Ethan died, unfortunately. He had a massive heart attack, and that kind of really, changed everything for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of, hit hard for everybody.
Yeah.
Obviously, Aaron more than anybody, because it's his brother.
Right.
And so we kind of like paused, not really doing anything. And I did some side projects. And then after that, what happened? Well, then we were arguing again and all this stuff. But then
Right.
Monsters of Rock Cruise reached out to me and was like, "Hey, are you guys
Okay.
still playing?" Because it was hard to tell if you looked at our page, like, are these guys
Sure.
around or they're not around? And I was like, "Yes, we're around," which wasn't 100% true.
Right. You
And
just
they
figured.
were like, "Oh, we'd like to get you on the cruise. Is that possible?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, and I told them straight out, I was like, "I'm not 100% sure who is going with
Right.
me, but it's White Trash. Will play
Yeah.
this,"
We'll
because
be
I
here.
own the name, so I can be a jerk and just make those kind of decisions. So I
Right.
basically begged everyone to do it, because I was like, my point was, look, everybody worked so hard, you know what I mean, all these years, and there wasn't a lot to show for it. If anything, this is just an awesome experience to go on a cruise
Yeah.
with Tesla, and like I said, who I can't Extreme and King's X.
Yeah, yeah, amazing
you know,
band, and yeah,
right. And I was like, we deserve this, and then like if anything, this could just be closure, and we can just wrap it up, or let's maybe use this for some momentum to do another album. So I was, it was a little crazy, but I was able to get everybody to do it finally. And everybody in that situation was Dave Barkow, the second drummer, Aaron, Craig, the second guitar player, and most of the horn section.
awesome.
So we did that, and we also did a tribute show for Ethan, to
Yeah,
kind of raise some money for his kid and
yeah,
wife. And so that we did that, and then you know did that, and everybody was like, yeah, let's do this, let's keep doing it, this was tons of fun. We get off the cruise 1 week later, COVID.
yeah. Oh man, of course.
So that's, in reality, that's sort of the end of anything productive we were doing as a band.
Right.
Basically, we only played one show after COVID, which was this
Okay.
Queens Rock Fest that my friend George puts on in Queens. And but we had plans to do a new album, and we started
Yeah.
recording it, and we started booking shows. And then, much like in 1992, everybody bailed on me.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
everybody, but like pretty much. And
Yeah.
so that left me sort of like, well, okay, so now what? Wrap it up or what?
Right.
So I kind of decided not to, but at the same time, I don't really want to replace people and all of that. So that
Yeah.
brings us to the next CD, which was the Cock in a Box album, which was
Right.
all the leftover material from the second album, because we had all this material, and I had to like figure out how to transfer things from cassettes and DAT tapes, and and
Right.
all the
Right.
archives. And we put together this cool companion piece to COCK, which obviously spells cock, so that's why
Right.
Cock in a Box.
Yeah.
And so I put that together and put it out, and it just sold out in like
Right.
2 or 3 days, which,
Right.
I mean, it was a limited, because people don't, you don't make that many CDs anymore, because not everybody wants CDs. So, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously it could still be downloaded, but so I had to do a second, printing on that. And then, so I was kind of blown away with that, because even on our last legs, we had like, you know, a little surge there. I don't know if that was like
Yeah. For sure.
right before you die, like, you shit
Yeah.
your pants. I don't know if that was the shitting the pants or whatever it was, but it was really cool. It was really cool. I was
Yeah.
glad to see so many people enjoyed it. And we did this special packaging where it actually came in a box with, all these stickers and things like that. So it was really fun to put it together. And that's where I'm at now, with
Okay.
you know
Right. Right. So, I had Mark Knight on the show last week from Bang Tango, and
oh yeah.
yeah, and he was talking about, he remembered your band too, by the way.
Yeah,
He's like, "Oh, White Trash, I remember those guys."
yeah, we opened for them,
Oh,
in
nice.
1990 or something like that at the Cat
Sure.
Club. And
Oh,
the funny
awesome.
thing was, years later, when I wasn't doing music, I was in LA, and I went to the Rainbow,
Yeah.
and this girl that was friends with my ex-girlfriend, I guess, was going out with one of them. And
Okay.
so I saw her in there. She's like, Dave. And then she, was with the guy from Bang Tango. And he was like, I had never heard of White Trash. I heard of White Trash. And I was like, oh, okay.
So you're drunk, basically? Is that
Yeah, we were all drunk. And but we went to a party at their house, very cool dudes. And I
nice?
actually fell asleep on their couch, because we had
Oh,
just
that's
driven
awesome.
from Las Vegas or something.
Nice.
And we were just inebriated. And but those guys are really cool guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they were my favorite band in high school, honestly. So it was cool having him on. But he does like a solo acoustic thing, even though it's a band. I mean, it's and he puts out the albums, like he makes them in his house. Like he has a studio, makes
Right.
CDs, he sells the CDs, and pockets almost everything. And he
Yeah.
said at this point, like he's it's more sustainable than when they were on a label. Like they were broke, on the label, even though they were
Yeah,
selling records. And now he'll sell a couple hundred, and all of that is money that goes right into his pocket.
yeah, that's exactly what this last project was. That's why it was. So, I mean, you have to first of all think about this. All this stuff was recorded already, so it
Right.
really
Sure.
was just transferring it. So it was very low production costs. It was time consuming,
Right.
but yeah. So like, that's the thing. So So you made a point earlier, and I realized I meant I could ramble on for hours. Like, so what you asked earlier was why can't you find it, right? Like, I
Yeah. Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
CDs. So the
Yeah.
so the physical copies all sold out, which is good news.
Right.
The first two albums are on Spotify, but that's only because it's too difficult for me to take them off personally.
Okay.
It's just not
Okay.
worth the headache. I
Yeah.
hate Spotify. I understand the appeal of it. I've used it. It's
Yeah.
totally, but for artists, you're not going to make any money. It doesn't matter. Like, people,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if
Yeah.
you're a huge artist, you're still, I forget who it was. Like somebody was like, yeah, I'm looking at these things and it just doesn't add up. I mean, they give you 0.017, yeah,
Yeah.
0.017 each play. Like,
Right.
so don't play it is my point. Like, it's good. I lived my life. I'm good. Like, you're not helping me in any way. Like, now, if I was a
Yeah.
new artist, you're gonna have to, dance with the devil there. But I'm an old guy. I already made my bones, so I'm just like, fuck Spotify. Like, there's no
Right.
way. So, none of the other albums are on Spotify, but that's my decision, because
Yeah.
I just looked at it and it just so a couple of months ago I was on Facebook and I kind of just asked everybody, like, should I put this stuff on Spotify? I mean, and I know a lot of people want me to do it, but I'm just having a hard time
Yeah.
doing it because it's just so unfair to the artist. Like it, and
Yeah.
now they're like basically saying if you're not one of the top, played artists, they're not going to
Yeah.
pay you at all. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm glad this is so
Right.
convenient for everybody. And I'm glad
Right.
this fat, bald motherfucker is making $1 billion off of this. But the fact of the matter is, there's no viable path forward. And again, the guy we talked about, Adrian Ballou, I sort of model like how I do it, not my playing or anything. I mean, he self-produces his records, releases
Yeah.
them, and he doesn't put them on Spotify. And it's like, you buy him at his show or you buy him from his website. And it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't work for everybody, obviously.
Right.
But to be honest with you, I'm trying to set something up. I don't even care. I mean, you can download our stuff for free. I don't care if you bootleg it, whatever. I just don't think Spotify, or anybody, Amazon, like, why should anybody make any money? They're not doing anything.
Yeah.
They just have it on a site that has infinite products. Like, they're not
Right.
marketing it. It's just there. And you're like supposed to be like, thank you. MTV did that in the day, but it literally helped you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
And they had to wind up paying everybody retroactively, because of lawsuits and stuff. But they
Right.
had a legitimate argument that, hey, if you're on MTV,
Yeah. You're gonna be a star,
you're
basically.
you're gonna you're in in the music business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Spotify is nothing. So it's like, people, I mean, I'm not making fun of somebody who's proud of a recording they made, but they're like, yeah, it's going to be on Spotify soon. It's like, so why isn't it on Spotify now? You just uploaded
Right.
it. It's not like
Right.
it's not a release date. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but that is the world we're in. I don't think it's fair to artists. It's not about Joe Rogan or Neil Young or anything like
Sure.
that. It's just
Sure.
business. It doesn't make sense. So if you just want people to easily listen to your music, you can put it up there. But and like I said, I get it, but it's a little different if the Beatles or Led Zeppelin, I mean, the amount of money they've made and still generate on even a dumb platform like that
Right.
makes it usable. But for me, I would want to work out a specific deal the same way the labels do, because the
Yeah.
labels make money, but they sell everything. Like, so they make
Sell a
money.
catalog and then
My
yeah.
point is, well, I'll give you all these unreleased records that are rare and fantastic, but I think I need more than 0.017
Yeah.
cents each spin. You know what I'm saying?
for sure. I have a friend who had one song blow up last year. I don't even know. He doesn't even know why, but he's on DistroKid,
Yeah,
and he got 1.5 million
awesome.
view or listens, downloads, whatever it is, on this one song, but he got like $100.
Yeah, well,
You know,
that's the
it's
point.
like, geez.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I think it's ridiculous. That's all I can
Yeah,
say. You know what I mean? Is it
yeah,
convenient? Yeah. Like if you're driving, you know, and you got 10 hours to drive and you just want to listen to the whole Black Sabbath catalog and, you know, it's awesome for that. Otherwise, you're going through your CDs and trying to
right.
drive and drink your coffee. I mean, you know what I mean? It's a good product in that sense, but it's ridiculous that they can't share the wealth with the artist. Like everyone else
Yeah,
is benefiting from it. And look, it's a tough business for artists these days, man. I mean, unless you have, like, seriously, unless you're a girl in a
yeah,
bikini on Instagram that has 5 million people, you know,
yeah, for
subscribe to your
sure.
OnlyFans account. You know, that's the first question a label's going to ask you is like, well, what's your
How
social
many
media
followers is
presence
there?
like?
You know?
Because we're not marketing you. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? And they don't give you the same kind of advances we got. They want your merchandising, they want your publishing. They're like, give us everything, you market it. And if we make money off of this, we might say thank you. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right,
But
right.
it's tough. So I feel bad for like guys doing it now. It's cool to see the old bands out there because, like you said, somebody like Bang Tango or you know any of these bands, if they really want to, they could do this and directly market it to the fan base and just you know. So there are ways for those of us who have been in the game for a while to make a couple of shekels, but
Yeah,
it's really tough. I mean, you know, you really just have to play nonstop and pour yourself on a out on a level that you know would embarrass Tracy Lords. You know what I'm saying? So,
sure. Yeah. So speaking of some of the changes in the music industry, like I'm from upstate New York, so
oh,
about six
cool.
hours down or 6 hours up from the city, but I grew up in Ithaca. I
Where
don't know
about?
if you I grew up
Oh,
in Ithaca.
I just drove through Ithaca
Oh,
2 days
nice.
ago. It was in
Yeah, I
Buffalo.
was born in Syracuse and grew up in Ithaca.
Yeah, I
So,
just drove that whole path up to Buffalo.
oh, nice. I lived in Buffalo for a summer. So, yeah.
Cool.
But
Yes.
so we were very aware of what was happening in New York City because bands like White Zombie used to come up and play in Ithaca at this club called Max's. Like it seemed like at least a couple times a month. They would joke. They'd be like, "Hey, we're White Zombie. We're the house band." I don't know if they said that everywhere, but they used to say it at Max's every time they played. But in the 70s and 80s and even up until the mid and late 90s, like New York had a very vital club scene. What's it like now? Is it because I know I talked to Mark and LA is a lot different. It's really hard for original artists to play in LA, but what's New York
Yeah.
like?
I mean, New York City is not a place you're going to play really. I mean, there are venues, but
Yeah,
it's not a big deal and it's all pay to play and like, you know, it's a waste of time. So Brooklyn is better.
yeah,
But it's just that's a certain scene. I live on Long Island.
okay,
There's nothing. There are venues, but it's you know, everything's cover bands and
yeah,
you know, a girl with an acoustic guitar with that same voice that every girl seems
yeah.
compelled
What
to
is
sing.
that?
Mhm.
What
You
is
know, it's
that?
like
Yeah,
this bad Billie Holiday shit.
yeah,
Billie
yeah.
Holiday, great. I'm not putting her down,
Right,
but
right.
it's this really weak and what it is because they don't really have to go out and perform at full volume. So I
Yeah,
mean, not everybody has to do that. But the point is everything's just the same from what I see. You know, I know lots of
yeah,
people who do cover bands. I'm gonna insult a lot of people right now. I have no respect for cover bands at all. I mean, I would have more respect for it if it was like people doing like what Jimi Hendrix did when he did a cover. Like do your version of this song, sing it your
yeah.
way, but going to see some, you know, fat guy
Like
in a
tribute
baseball hat
bands.
and cargo pants singing you know, jukebox hero. It's like I walk right out. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
like if I walk in, I'm like, nope, nope, we're going
yeah,
somewhere else, not doing this. But you know, how are you supposed to make money? That's how you make money. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're a
yeah,
session guy and you're in Nashville, you can make money doing that. They have a big scene. But again, you know, it's a different thing. So to me, my interest in music and what excites me about music is, is being an artist, creating art. And I don't mean that in a pretentious way. I just mean when you see a band and they're doing something that you never heard before, it's an exciting feeling if you connect with it. So it's
Yeah.
so much now, you just see stuff and you're like, well, that's sort of like this or that. So sometimes you find something, there's bands like Idols. I don't know if you know that band.
Yeah, I do. Yep.
They're badass. That's cool.
Yeah,
It's nothing I
for
would
sure.
do, but it's fucking great.
Right.
Occasionally you find somebody that's doing something cool and it's like inspires you in some way to do something. But so much
Yeah.
of what I see and people I know, it's just like, I get why you're doing the cover band thing, I get why, but it's the end of music. That's not a music scene. But like I like to say, like you're not working in the entertainment industry, you're working in the bar and restaurant industry. The bar back is making more money than you in reality.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You got to play
Yep.
3 sets of the
Yep.
not the I take it back, not the worst music, the most played out music. Like if you really want to hear, Brown Eyed Girl, I just turn the radio on. It'll be on
Yeah.
in
Yeah. Be
5
there.
minutes. Like I
Yeah.
promise. Like just
Yeah.
be a little patient. I wish you would go see a cover band and they would do like B-sides and cool songs. That would be
Right.
cool.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Or again,
Right.
like you could do your own version of the song, but people I know from friends of mine that play in these bands, people
People
don't
don't want
want
to get there.
different
They don't
songs. They don't
react.
want
Yeah.
different renditions of the songs. They start walking away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the owner of the bar is like, oh, no, 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 this is no good. Play
Yeah.
Jesse's Girl because
Right.
everybody's leaving. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think it's pretty sad, but at the same time, there are definitely creative musicians and artists in their mom's basements right now that see the
Yeah.
same things we see. And this cycle will end, death
You're
to
so
the oppressors. And I'm hoping that, with the fall of society, people will bring back a vibrant music scene to get us through the hell we're about to go through.
yeah. People will be playing on jugs and sticks, but it'll be
Yeah.
awesome, heartfelt, and creative. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would like to see. I would like to, reinvent the wheel every day. Like that's what I want, but right now
Yeah.
it's a little bleak, but I
Yeah.
know in my heart there's good stuff out there. I'm just not aware of it.
For sure. I know, like, I don't know if you've heard, uh, Dreamwife, from England.
No, I'll
They're,
check it.
yeah, I mean, they should be huge. Like they're a three-piece. They met in like an art school and decided to
Right.
start a band, and it's all about like bringing down the man. Like that's what their songs are basically about. Like, and it's really cool. Like early Blondie, like Talking Heads, but subversive, like super. I mean, it's just good, so
Well,
good, and no one in America knows who they are. Like then they there's a lot of cool stuff actually happening in England and like the UK in general, that we don't hear about. Sergeant Thunderhoof is an amazing band. Like this
yeah.
stoner rock, just really cool, great vocals.
Yeah, sometimes I go down like a YouTube rabbit hole,
Yeah,
and you find something cool, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And you're like,
for
oh,
sure.
this is cool. There's some band Electric Moon, which is like a
Oh, cool.
improv, space rock kind of thing. I was watching a bunch of their stuff and I was like, this is cool. But yeah, I've never heard it. No one else has ever referenced it to me. So
Right,
it looks like they
right.
have a following, but I'm like, wow, good for these guys.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
just
cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because like I said, Mark Knight was on here last week. You're on here this week. And what drew me to you guys, to your bands, was that you were so different from what was happening.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear Poison again. So like,
But
and
that's what I
now
mean.
everybody wants to, like you said, Adele and Duffy and Amy Winehouse were cool, but now everybody is doing that.
Yeah, it's just there's a lack of creativity. I mean, it just,
Yeah,
and I mean, I get, and I think it's all cyclical, right? Like, so
yeah,
I think, maybe in the 50s, people were all trying to do the same thing at one point, even though there's great music from the 50s. I'm not
absolutely.
slamming
Yeah.
it. But, there was a sort of way you presented and did a song. And that's why when
Sure.
the 60s and 70s came, people were like, what
Yeah,
the fuck is
yeah,
going on?
yeah,
And, so I have to believe that's coming in some way. It might be in a way that I don't even fully appreciate. It could be more electronic, or
Right.
or
Sure.
like you said, it could be a jug band. Emmett
Yeah.
Otter's band reinvented. I don't
Yeah.
know, but I mean, you would just like to see something where even if you didn't like it, you could say, wow, that's
That's different.
that's weird. That's fucking
Yeah.
crazy. I just don't
Yeah.
see it a lot. But like I said, I'm sure it's out there, but radio stations just play the same stuff all over again, right?
Right.
So yeah, I
Right.
guess you could go on Spotify and they sort of curate for you. And oh, if you like
But
the
the
talk,
curation on Spotify is kind of terrible, to be completely
but that's
honest.
my thing. It's like, why would I like this? This is the opposite of what I'm listening to. You don't
Yeah.
understand. But so like
Yeah.
you don't have a lot of local radio, college radio stations are still good.
Yeah.
Sometimes like
Right.
NYU radio has always been good in New York.
Mhm.
Because they don't have, they have different programs, right? My
Right.
friend
Right.
Glenn, who was one of the engineers that worked on some of our later albums, and he's a drummer in a band Billy called Sandwich, and
Okay.
he was a DJ on NYU
Okay.
for what was it called? Oh, something Chaos, but it was all like thrash stuff. But then
Hmm.
after that they would have like ambient music, and then all of a sudden you'd have country music, and
Right.
but they have the afternoon show in NYU, and sometimes I can turn that on and you hear something interesting, but lately even that doesn't have much of an edge to it. So
Yeah.
I might just be looking for something in music that you know the
Yeah.
record buying, the younger audience is not interested in. Because I know a lot of times people look at us rocker dudes like we're ridiculous, and
Mm.
and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, we that's the whole point.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
ridiculous. It
Are a
was
little
insane,
ridiculous.
you know.
Yeah. It's funny. My son is 10, and he is kind of obsessed with YouTube, and so he's really into rap because that's what they play like in all their
Right,
little clips. But because I'm around, the first bands that I really played for him are like Kiss and the Beatles and stuff
right.
like that. And so he has an appreciation for rock music that a lot of kids his age don't, and I'm pretty proud of that. Like I was listening to your second album, and he was like, I said, this guy's going to be on the show on Thursday. And Casey said, "Oh, he's really good." And I was like,
Well,
"Yeah, man."
thank you.
So yeah. I mean, I wish. I mean, I don't know. I'm an older parent. I don't know what these like 30-year-olds are playing for their 10-year-olds, but
Not it's because I'm
yeah,
an old dad too. My son is
yeah,
gonna be 13, but
right,
my son's bands are the Ramones, Led Zeppelin, Queen, Black Sabbath, the
yeah.
Beatles, Stones. We went to see David Gilmour last year, which was
Oh,
great.
awesome,
So
nice.
I'm very proud of the fact that my son understands what good music is. And
Yeah,
I know it's a hard thing for him at school because, he's, people talking about Taylor Swift, and it's like, I mean, we
yeah,
just have to say it. She's not talented. Like, I mean,
yeah,
she's not uniquely talented in any way.
right,
She is there for unexceptional young girls that
yeah.
that lack pride and confidence. That's who
She
she.
makes them feel good. Yeah,
They're okay songs. I mean, she can
right.
sing, but I mean, seriously, that's the biggest thing in the world. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
fair.
depressing. And I have
Yeah,
nothing against her views, whatever they might be. It's just
sure.
it's hard to imagine that's the most exciting thing. That's the show that people are going to go and pay $10,000 a ticket for.
Right,
It's like,
right.
what do you expect to see? Some skinny girl with
Yeah, I mean,
some goofy looking like glittery acoustic guitar. I mean,
yeah,
what are you watching? You're not
yeah.
watching any.
I mean, in the early '90s, I saw Warrior Soul at a club,
Oh yeah,
and
Corey.
yeah, man, and it was like a life-changing freaking experience. I highly doubt going to see Taylor Swift is changing anybody's life.
It's a comfortable. You know what it is? It's a comfortable experience. We
Yeah,
were
and
going
Warrior
chaos.
Soul confrontational. It was so, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Corey. Warrior Soul had the same manager as
Oh, okay,
us, and
cool.
and
Yeah.
and we were and we actually went and taped Headbangers Ball on MTV with Ricky Rackman the same
Sure.
day. I think we cut it up into different episodes or whatever.
Right, right,
But Corey
right.
is a very cool guy. I haven't seen him
Yeah,
in 30 years or something, but I know he's still
right.
out there doing it too,
Oh
fighting
yeah,
back.
they're still definitely still doing stuff. Like
Yeah.
he got out of his deal and went crazy. Just started making records. Like
Yeah.
I know he wasn't, like the word is anyway, he wasn't real happy with the record deal and uh wanted to go out and do his own stuff. So I mean, he definitely did it. I mean, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Still doing it. Yeah.
yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, one of the things that I remember the most about that Warrior Soul show is they wanted him to announce it was Last Call. And he
Yeah.
said, this is an important show. Tell people that at the bar. And then went into like Wasteland or something like that. It was just like, man. So
Yeah, but that's what,
yeah,
but that was the point that we were rebelling, maybe not
yeah,
intelligently and maybe not focused on anything important, but
right.
everything was rebellion and, and sex, drugs, rock and roll,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
okay, that's not really sustainable. We've lost enough people along the way that we know that, but that energy, the ferocity, the visceral experience of those days, people just
Yeah,
don't understand. Even people that are not that much younger than me, like when I went back
right.
to school and I was in a graduate program in San Francisco, it was an art school. So, I was, all my roommates and stuff were like cool artists and stuff. And they got a kick out of the fact that I was in a band, but I know they were like,
Right.
that shit's terrible. Like,
Yeah.
that's embarrassing that he did that. And it's like, no,
Okay.
you just don't understand. It was like
Yeah.
I always say, it was like being like a Viking. Like you would just
Right.
go into a club, you're grabbing women and drinks and, you have no money.
So
Like
awesome, man. Yeah.
there's no way any of this should work out. But
Yeah.
it's not only
But it
does it work
does.
out, it's exceptional, you know?
Yeah.
So that
Absolutely.
sort of, you know, electricity that was part of that scene, more, and not just that scene, like I said, the new wave scene, the punk scene,
Yeah.
even, early dance music scenes and stuff. There was something really happening. Now
Right.
it's more of a passive experience where you sit and people are looking at their phone and they look up at the stage and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, no, 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 I already had one drink. I'm good. Again, you don't have to drink if you're not into drinking. But my point is,
Sure.
if all the energy and the craziness and the chaos, it's just not there, or I'm not
Yeah.
seeing it. So I have to believe
No,
kids are
you're
always
right.
crazy, and there has to be a scene somewhere where they're like sacrificing virgins or something. But I guess it's in a back room somewhere. I don't know what's
Right.
going on. I
Right.
would see that kind of mania, hysteria, energy somewhere. I just don't see it anywhere anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
Next month. Yeah. Next month, I'm going to see Trickster and Enough's Enough and Pretty Boy Floyd.
cool.
But they're with this kid from Texas called Kristen Shields. Great. Sounds like Don Dokken. Great
Oh
guitar
yeah,
player, great voice. And that's the main reason I'm going. But we had to pay for a table.
yeah.
And
See, I
and
don't.
it's a rock club. Like it's the Blue Note and it's a rock club.
Yeah,
But we have to sit at a I think there's space where we can get up and dance if we want to, but we're gonna be
yeah,
sitting at a table with seven other people. Like
yeah. I mean, that's what
so
I'm saying.
weird.
I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just I don't get that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
definitely.
But I mean, the flip side of it is that I guess you keep going, however, and if you got to adapt and
Sure.
change along the way, that's not my forte. But the point
Right,
is,
right, right.
I guess if it keeps going, it's cool. But yeah, like to me, yeah, right. Like the idea of sitting at a table, and I don't know. It's just
I'm gonna get up. Like there's no way I'm gonna my 51-year-old ass is getting up. But
yeah,
I'm not gonna just sit at a table. But it's wild, man. Like, yeah.
yeah. I mean, if you're gonna sit at a table, you could sit at home and live stream it. I don't know,
Yeah, for
but
sure. Definitely. All right, man. Well, do you have anything going on right now that you want to talk about? I know that
um,
you still listen to Cock in a Box on your Bandcamp. Everything is sold out, but if you want to check it out, it's still there to listen
yeah,
to. I
you
know
can
that.
download it from there. So basically, yeah, where it's at now is that I'm sort of, so we have a record that we started, and I
Okay.
do have a commitment to getting that finished somehow, some way, but
Okay.
it's not it's not coming soon. I'm basically doing it all by myself, you know, at this point.
Right.
So maybe some other guys will jump in at some point, but that's one thing. Also, in the same way that we did the Cock in the Box thing, there's a lot of leftover material from the first album that I would like to put out, possibly on vinyl.
No.
And there's some other stuff in the archive. So there's more stuff coming, but it's more like I was saying to somebody, I went from being like, you know, a performer to more like a label now, where I'm like re-releasing stuff. So, you know, we may like reprint and re-release some of the stuff that's out of print in limited qualities. I kind of think it's cool now that this stuff is hard to get. So I don't want to flood.
I mean,
the market.
If you put those albums back out, I will buy them. Just so you know, I will buy them. So,
you know, and it was funny, we did put some out when I did the Cock in the Box. So it was like you could get all 3 of the, you know, the later CDs and in a bundle. So I mean, I am going to do stuff like that. It's just more like you know, I'm lurking in the shadows. You know what I mean? I have no love mainstream success, but it's not happening. I'm too old, and the scene doesn't want me. My band doesn't want me. Nobody wants me, but I'm still here. I'm a cockroach. I'm not going away. So there will be stuff. You keep an eye out on Facebook. If that goes away, I'll find some other way, you know, and maybe I'll even have to jump in the Spotify pool at some point. But there's more trash stuff coming. I would love to say there's shows and stuff coming. At this point, there isn't, but I always have hope that there might be. And then I'll just throw out quickly, I had a few side projects. Mug Bug was one. Another one is 2 Ton Turntable, Bone Monkey. And then I'm in another Bone Monkey. And then the one other project where I just play guitar, I don't sing, is Black Toast, which is all improvised, you know, like space rock, like I was talking about that other band, Electric Moon. So that stuff's out there. It's also very hard to find, but I think I'm embracing the idea of being like some sort of, you know, cult. I'm embracing the cult following. I gave up on mainstream success. I'm a dad. Like I'm a legend with a cool story. Like, you know what I mean? If you find me at a birthday party, you can sit down and have a beer with me, and I'll tell you some funny stories.
Oh yeah, man. And White Trash Universe, right?
White Trash Universe is the whitetrashuniverse.com is the website. It needs to be redone, but yeah, I'm one old guy, so it takes me I got 2 speeds, slow and stop. So I'm just going slow. I'm not going to stop.
All good, brother. Well, man, I appreciate you coming by, dude. This has been fun. It's really cool to reminisce and talk a little bit about everything. So yeah.
Also, I like your sunglasses. I meant to tell you that.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Cool. It kind of matches the aesthetic of the show. So
definitely. Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun to reminisce.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I want to thank my producer, Tyler Martin. He's the one who's going to make sure that this thing sounds good and looks good when it gets put up. And I want to thank, like I said, Dave DeBone Allen, or D-Bone. Is it D-Bone or DeBone?
D-Bone, like T-Bone.
D-Bone. Gotcha. All right, cool. Dave D-Bone Allen. And next month, because it's April, funniest month of the year, we're going to be having 3 comedians coming on. So that should be fun. And then at the end of the month, very end of the month, we're going to be talking to Ronnie Barnett from the Muffs. So there should be some really cool stories. Yeah. I'm excited for that. Yeah, I mean,
just funny. I was working in a recording studio. This is in my lost years where I was just roaming the world. I worked in a recording studio, and they came in and did a live set for some radio station. I can't remember.
Nice,
some radio broadcast, but yeah, they're a good band.
It's funny because I feel like the Muffs were sort of legendary. You know, I feel like they had something, man.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah, I really feel like talking to him is going to be a good time for sure. I mean, like I said, from what I've heard, he's got some pretty good stories. So it'll be cool to talk to him. I got Lucas Rossi coming on at the beginning of May, and then Frank Palangio will be coming back at the end of May, and that's what we've got so far. So,
right, cool.
Yeah. So anyway, everybody, thank you so much to Dave again. Thanks to Tyler and Emmy Studios, and thanks everybody else for checking it out. We'll see you next week with more Most Excellent Entertainment.